Greetings and salutations! I am Duwende, and I'm back with my second upload. Again, I'm indulging in the creepy and true accounts from Reddit. If you like what you hear, please tap the like button. And if you enjoy these stories, please share your appreciation with original contributors back on the Reddit BackwoodsCreepy page. Now, please enjoy. This was the most terrifying moment of my life. Always will be. My family and a friend's family were going on a hiking trip to the Appalachian Mountains. We had rented cabins at a camping site that had arranged certain paths to follow each day of our 14-day-long trip that we would walk each day. The first 3 days went great. We saw wildlife, had a good time, and talked a lot. But on the 4th day, we were taking a trail that was more secluded and overgrown than the others. We were walking for about 30 minutes when I was hit with this overwhelming feeling of uneasiness. The feeling just stayed there no matter how hard I tried to beat it back. Then, and everyone else on the hike denies this, I hear singing in a language that I've never heard before. It's like the singing described in the myths of the sirens. Sweet and enchanting, yet the music invoked a feeling of fear, down to my bones. Everyone else seems completely oblivious to it. I tried telling my dad that something was wrong, but he just told me I was probably tired and that we would stop soon. So about 5 minutes later, and the singing just keeps getting louder, and my heart was racing. We had stopped to rest, and to eat something as well. I wish with all my heart that we hadn't stopped. About 2 minutes into our little rest, the singing is still getting progressively loud, but my nerves have settled slightly. Then, everything falls silent. Everyone in our group, about 12 people, suddenly turns to the trees to our left. A figure, tall and in a black cloak, was barely visible between the trees. It was a woman, much taller than normal people are, with pure white hair flowing out of her hood. Her head is down, but her face is still slightly visible. All I can make out is that her skin is very pale yellow, like old paper. As we watch, she just stalks closer to our group, finally stopping right at the edge of the trees. She looks up, and I swear to God, as long as I live and breathe, I will never forget her face. Her eyes are completely white, with no pupils or irises visible. She had a thin pointed nose, and had a mouth with lips that were stained red. I don't want to know why. She stares at us for a moment, and then smiles. It was horrifying. She had no teeth, and her eyes began to shine. She then begins to talk. She had a horrible, scratchy, high-pitched voice, and said, "Leave this place while you still can. I'll be watching you. Don't try anything." I blink, and she's gone. Everyone is silent. This is my first time telling this story to anyone else who didn't experience this with me, and I never discuss it with anyone who did experience this with me. It feels good to share this experience with someone. It makes me cringe, realizing how long ago this was. Nearly 25 years ago, when I was in my early 20s. I was sharing a house with a couple of guys who were all in the same religious order. It was a great house to live in, because we kept a tidy house and a roster for housework and cooking duties. But I digress. Anyway, me and one of the other guys had a day off, and I suggested we go for a hike to a place I visited every few months or so. It was a big granite outcrop in the middle of Victoria, Southeast Australia. There was a lookout at one outcrop, the lower one, that had a car park, and a well-formed path to the top, and there was a dirt road that went for 3 kilometers between the outcrop and the bigger, higher one. The dirt road curves around, but I used to like to walk through the bush between the 2 outcrops and climb the bigger one. These outcrops had a lot of huge granite boulders, some the size of a house. You can climb some of them and jump from one to the other like a big, natural kids' playground. We parked and walked up to the lookout. Nothing unusual. There wasn't anyone else around, or any other cars, but that is not unusual for a weekday out there. We looked around at the surrounding countryside, and after a few minutes, walked back down the path, and past the car to cross to the other outcrop. At that point, we both saw a man coming up the road, but, he had 4 legs and 4 arms. Not like they were naturally growing out of his torso, but like a video processing a glitch, where those two parts of the picture were doubled and out of sync, one covering the other, but third overlapping. It took a few seconds for us to work out what we were seeing, like your brain trying to make sense of what you're looking at. I kept looking and trying to work out what was wrong with what I was seeing. I could tell by how my friend was acting that he also saw something wrong. After about 10 seconds, though it felt longer, we realized we were seeing what we were seeing. We both started walking really fast the other way. We were heading back to the lookout, but the car was just 50 meters away. We started going back up the track again, and then both stopped and thought, "What are we doing? Get back in the car!" I could see the man getting closer, but he was still a way off. We jumped into the car. I spun it around and got the hell out of there. He was wearing a yellowy tank top, jacket maybe, and turquoise pants. A weird combination for where we lived. I didn't have to ask my friend, "Did you see that?" because it was obvious that he had. As we calmed down, we kept saying, "What the hell was that?" and "I don't know what the hell that was, but..." We got to the next town and bought lunch and a drink and didn't talk about it to anyone or each other ever again. However, now, having heard some stories, I wonder if he saw exactly what I saw. Or if he saw something equally weird, but different? I loved these creepy tales, but I think it's time for the palate cleanser. A tale that proves love is a scream. My spouse and I met in our first year of college around 14 years ago. We spent a few weeks as acquaintances in a large group of friends, and didn't really get to meet one another well until this event. For a little bit of backstory, our group of friends loved to take walks in the woods. Our campus was surrounded by forest. Unfortunately, everyone had class or work during the day, so we often waited till night when everyone was free to go on walks. We were so comfortable in the woods at night, it just felt like a perfectly natural thing to do. This particular night, which happened to be the night before Halloween, a bunch of our friends were dropping out for one reason or other. Homework, tired, tests. Eventually, the last one besides my future husband and I dropped out. But knowing that him and I didn't know each other well, that last friend told us we should go on the walk together anyways. It was a little awkward, but we were both friendly people, so we decided to be adventurous and make the best of it. So we headed out into the woods, just being acquaintances, and decided to walk down the path that would take us to a place called the altar site. Named because it had a log kind of shaped like an altar, where college students often left knickknacks and stuff. Unfortunately, in the dark, we didn't know this path as well, and we realized that we were getting lost. We joked about having to spend the night out there, and I said, "I hope you aren't afraid of survival cuddling." After 45 minutes of walking, in what seemed like circles, we started to realize that might not be a joke. We then decided we should just pick a line and start walking, as straight through the woods as we could. We were hoping this would get us out, because we knew that the entire section of woods was surrounded by roads or ocean, and we would know what to do when we hit one or the other. It was pretty rough. We walked into trees, rivers, swamps, and just kept going for another hour or so until we stumbled out onto what seemed like a larger trail than what we had been on. At this point, we started following the trail, hoping that it was the main trail, and we could use it to find our way out. I was so thrilled. I remember jumping out onto it, smiling and saying, "We're going to be okay! This will surely get us out!" We followed it out into a small meadow, where we unfortunately lost sight of the trail again, hoping that we would see it again in the woods on the other side. We walked across the meadow and entered the tree line on the other side, only to suddenly realize that the trail had disappeared. We were about to turn around when we suddenly heard a loud and crisp, bloody scream in the woods nearby. It must have lasted like 10 seconds and felt super close. The sound can only be explained as a pig bird woman screaming bloody murder. We stood there for a second, and then I asked, "What was that?" Future husband said, "I don't know." And then I suggested we head back into the meadow where we could kind of see things. So we head back into the meadow and just stood there for a few minutes, not sure what to do. We couldn't find the trail, and something just screamed in the woods. It was a dreadful feeling, knowing we weren't alone, but had no idea how to get away from it. I then heard a thick branch on the ground in the tree line near us snap, and a thick, bushy tree near it started to shake, like something moved in it. Right after that, there was a sudden scream again. Whatever it was definitely right under the tree near us. The scream lasted what felt like 15 seconds. Definitely longer than the first one, and I remember suddenly hugging this acquaintance I was walking with out of fear. It was kind of awkward. I remember apologizing right away. He told me years later that if he hadn't been scared out of his wits, that hug would have been more enjoyable. And then it was kind of nice having this girl latch onto him like her life depended on it. I thought it was the last hug I was ever going to get. At this point, we were at a loss on what to do, and I remember turning around behind us and making out what looked like it could have been a trail curving around the bend. I guess we had missed it because we had walked into the meadow thinking it was the trail. I pointed it out to him, and we got back to back and started heading up the new trail path. We had brought our crappy flip phones with us, hoping to use them as flashlights. The brighter one had died earlier on the trail, but mine was still working. Unfortunately, I couldn't see anything with it. I just started flipping it open and shut, hoping it might scare whatever was out there. When we got about 20 paces up the trail, I started to hear a pattern of noise behind us. Since it was fall, the trail had leaves on it, but since it had gotten walked a lot during the day, the leaves in the center of the trail were flattened, but the leaves on the side were still crunchy. I kept hearing leaves on one side get stepped on, then silence, and then leaves on the other side of the trail crunching. It sounded like something was moving from side to side behind us on the trail, trying to get around my sight of vision. That's when we heard it scream one more time. It was right behind us. We both started running. Stupid, I know. It was only about 20 more paces, and suddenly we're out of the woods and in a large meadow that we both realized we recognized. I ran to the other side of the meadow and got to the paved road right near our campus. Nothing followed us out of the woods, but we did hear the thing scream one more time from the tree line. We ran back to our dorm rooms, promising to talk about what the hell happened in the morning. It was so late at night at this point, but we were both pumped with adrenaline from sheer terror. I tried looking up what it was that night, with my headphones on the dark dorm room while my roommate slept. I had some woodland experience, and I wanted it to be the sound of screeching owl. I looked all the screeching birds in the region, but nothing was quite right. They all sounded very screechy and bird-like, but that edge of human-like vocals just wasn't anything I found. I went to bed. We told our friends about it in the morning. It became an instant campus urban legend. People called it the Banshee in the woods. Some people wanted to make it into a documentary project, but it just stayed a local legend for a couple of years before fading away with all the other noise of the campus life. Most of our friends had heard the story by that point, so I was surprised when one friend of ours couldn't recall it. We told him the story and described the sounds in the best detail we could. He said, "I know exactly what you heard. That's a cougar." Well, poop. I looked that up. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before. I knew the cats could scream like women, but I had never heard it before. Despite my woodland experience, funny enough, I didn't know from some of my tracker friends that cougars often follow 5 to 6 month-long territory walks, so I started keeping an eye out for cougar sightings and activity around campus. Sure enough, I was able to track down people who had seen the cat about half a year after our encounter, with no sightings in between, and some articles about sightings around a year after our incident. I have found some people who have found a kill site on campus around 6 months after that. We could track the cat's routine visits to the campus to line up very squarely with ours. We only lasted a couple more weeks as acquaintance friends. I don't know if it was the experience in the woods, or if it was just us, but we both desired more than friendship. It wasn't a clean transition. He had just come out of a relationship a few weeks before we met, and was terrified that he was rebounding. We both took the winter slow and examined our thoughts. When we came back after the winter's New Year, there was no doubt. It had been over 14 years now. A few years ago, at our wedding, we told the story to our whole reception, and surprisingly, still had friends and family who hadn't heard it. We are both freelance and spend most of each day together working creatively. We walked in those woods practically strangers, and it sparked something that I never thought I would find. It wasn't scar-free, though. Trauma brought us together, but it also had its cost on my mental well-being. I started noticing it just a couple months after the event, that I was sometimes having panic attacks in the woods at night. Just the slightest noise I didn't recognize, and I would be filled with dread, almost paralyzed, and begging those around me to get me out of the forest. For me, that has been a big cost. I grew up walking the woods at night. I had become so comfortable with it. To lose that as an adult felt a little humiliating. I like to think I have made progress over the last 14 years in pushing it back, but all it takes is the right conditions to bring it all back. So, that's how my husband and I got to know each other.